Hey man, there's a certain kind of man that women don't just want, they get addicted to him. Not because he's the most handsome, not because he's the smoothest talker, but because he has a quality that most can't define but always feel. He's unpredictable. And I'm not talking about being erratic or immature. I'm talking about that grounded mystery. The man who doesn't move on cue. The one who doesn't fall into emotional routine. The one whose responses feel chosen, not automatic. And because she can't quite figure him out, her mind keeps looping back, wondering, replaying, obsessing. That's how addiction starts. Not through chaos, but through emotional tension she can't resolve. Predictability is comfortable, but comfort doesn't create obsession. What hooks her, what keeps her emotionally invested, is the feeling that she doesn't fully have you. That you're present, but elusive. Warm, but never over-available. Open, but never exposed all the way. And it's in that tension, where you give just enough to pull her in, but not enough to be completely figured out, that she starts investing more. Why? Because women don't chase certainty, they chase clarity. And when you're the man she can't predict, she starts putting in effort just to understand you. And that effort is where emotional addiction takes root. Most guys lose her interest because they become a blueprint. She knows what they're going to say before they say it. She knows when they'll text. She knows they'll always say yes. She can feel them adjusting their whole personality just to keep her happy. And that familiarity, it kills attraction. It removes edge. But the man she can't predict, he keeps her guessing. Not with games, with authentic depth. She doesn't know if he's going to flirt or stay stoic. Doesn't know if he'll reach out or stay silent. Doesn't know what he's thinking when he's quiet. And all of that emotional uncertainty heightens her senses. See, women are intuitive by nature, but when they meet a man whose energy they can't read, their instincts go into overdrive. Her body starts reacting before her mind catches up. She can't tell if she's winning or losing. She doesn't know where she stands. And the longer you hold that tension by being calm, self-contained, and emotionally non-reactive, the more her emotional mind starts chasing your presence. She starts filling in blanks that you never explained, starts analyzing what your silences mean, starts matching your rhythm just to stay connected. And that chase, that internal pull toward understanding you, that's what makes her obsessed without even realizing it. But here's the key. You can't be unpredictable by faking it. If you're doing it to manipulate, it backfires. If you're inconsistent out of insecurity, she senses it. But if you're unpredictable because you're genuinely self-directed, because you don't need her validation to stay grounded, then it becomes powerful. Your unpredictability isn't random. It's rooted in presence. You're not flaky. You're just not dependent. And when she senses that, it doesn't frustrate her. It intrigues her. Because now she realizes, this man isn't playing a part. He's just not chasing me. And that scares me, but I like it. Unpredictability makes her feel alive. Her nervous system stays engaged. She starts thinking about you during the quiet moments of her day. Not because you texted her non-stop, but because she doesn't know if you will. She replays your last interaction. She re-examines the tone in your last message. She compares the version of you she saw yesterday with the one she's seeing today. Not because you're inconsistent, but because you're deep. You have layers. You don't hand your whole personality over on day one. And the more she has to work to get to know you, the more she feels invested in keeping you. The man she can't predict knows when to show warmth and when to hold silence. He knows when to be present and when to disappear. He doesn't react emotionally. He doesn't chase. He doesn't explain his every move. And that subtle distance, that measured presence, creates a psychological loop in her brain. It becomes an itch she can't scratch. Because every time she feels like she's figured you out, you shift just slightly. Not in a manipulative way, just in a real way. Because you're not a performance, you're a man in motion, and motion makes her chase just to keep up. This unpredictability is what makes even emotionally secure women start to lean in. Because while they want consistency, they don't want emotional transparency. That becomes boring. They want presence paired with tension, openness wrapped in mystery. And when she gets that from you, she feels like she's constantly discovering a new part of you. And that discovery, that slow unraveling of who you are, that's the journey her emotions want to stay on. Not a man who reveals everything up front, but a man who reveals himself with patience. When she knows exactly how to win you, she stops trying. But when she doesn't know if she's winning, she doubles down. She puts more effort into conversations. She watches your reactions more closely. She becomes more attentive, more giving, more emotional, just to feel closer to the version of you she can't quite hold. And that effort creates the emotional investment that turns interest into attachment. Because now, you've become her emotional puzzle. Not because you confused her, but because you refuse to make yourself simple. The moment you stop trying to prove yourself to her and instead focus on observing her, you instantly become harder to read. And that's exactly what pulls her closer. She's used to men throwing themselves at her emotionally. She's used to over-explaining, oversharing, and over-committing in the first week. But you don't give away your full story in the first act. You let her discover it slowly, through presence, through vibe, through earned access. And that discovery process, that slow unraveling, keeps her glued in, because every time she thinks she's close, you show her that there's more to you. That emotional depth doesn't just build attraction, it builds dependency, because now you've become the mystery her mind keeps circling back to. A predictable man makes her feel like she has nothing to lose. But when your energy carries that slight unpredictability, when she knows you care, but she's never quite sure how much, or when, or why, you create space for her to chase clarity. And that chasing gives her something women rarely feel in modern dating: emotional accountability. She becomes more careful with her words, more deliberate with her energy. She stops testing for power and starts reaching for connection, because unpredictability doesn't make her feel unsafe. It makes her wake up. She starts trying to understand your silence, your timing, your rhythm. And that effort, that's what hooks her far deeper than any compliment ever could. Here's the mistake most men make. They confuse unpredictability with emotional chaos. But unpredictability doesn't mean being hot one day and cold the next. It means being grounded, but impossible to manipulate. It means having your own internal compass, your own timing, your own standards. She doesn't know if today you'll stay silent or lead with presence. She doesn't know if you'll want to talk for hours or go inward. But every version of you is real. And because it's real, not performed, it earns respect. And respect mixed with uncertainty. That's the perfect storm for emotional attachment. She starts seeing you as a man who can't be boxed in. And that image of you, that masculine force who leads himself regardless of who's watching, sticks in her head. Because she's been taught that men are either emotionally closed off or emotionally available all the time. But you're neither. You're emotionally aware. You don't give access to your heart cheaply. You don't explain your mood every time it shifts. You don't apologize for being in your own flow. And that resistance to being predictable, it becomes the exact reason she wants to get closer. Every time she thinks she's figured you out, you surprise her with depth. One day you're playful, the next you're stoic. One week you're fully present, and the next you're deep in your mission. You're not trying to distance yourself, you're just living in alignment, and that alignment has a rhythm of its own. When she realizes she doesn't control the beat, but that she wants to dance anyway, that's when she gets addicted, because now you're not a man who moves for her, you're a man who moves for himself. And the world will always lean toward those who don't lean too easily in return. This is when she starts changing. She starts watching her tone, starts checking her own mood before calling you. She stops playing games because she realizes the old tricks don't work. Why? Because you're not reacting. You're not emotionally reward-based. You're not falling into her predictable test loops. You just stay calm, stay present, or you stay gone. And that polarity, that tension, that not knowing, it creates an energy in her chest she can't ignore. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't play hard to get. You just stayed unpredictable enough to make her feel like every interaction matters. You have to understand something powerful here. When she can't predict you, she can't replace you. You don't live in the same emotional box as the last guy. You don't show up just to keep her company. You show up when it aligns with your mission. You give affection when it's real, not when it's earned by pressure. And when she realizes that your presence is not something she can schedule or script, that it's always felt but never expected, she becomes emotionally bonded in a way she doesn't fully understand. And that bond, born out of depth and surprise, becomes irresistible. The beauty of being unpredictable is that you allow her to be in a state of emotional flow. She has to adapt, she has to feel, she has to pay attention, and the more she does, the more invested she becomes. She stops checking for other men, stops entertaining distractions, because no one activates her mind the way you do, and that mental activation, that constant curiosity, is what keeps her locked in. You've made her feel something no one else did, wonder. And women don't walk away from men who create emotional wonder. The longer you stay grounded in this truth, the more magnetic you become. You don't need to chase. You don't need to overperform. You just lead with real presence and emotional discipline. You hold your frame. You move on your terms. You give just enough to stir desire, and then you go quiet long enough to let her lean in. That silence is what gives your energy weight. That pacing is what gives your presence impact. And when she feels the full contrast of who you are, present, unpredictable, composed, that's when she feels like she's finally met a man she can't control, but deeply wants to earn. So remember this, man. She gets addicted to the one she can't figure out, because her emotions aren't designed to fall for routine. They're wired to chase mystery with meaning. Be warm, but scarce. Be kind, but stoic. Be honest, but not exposed. Let her know you feel, but don't let her map you out. Let her feel the power of not fully knowing you, and she'll never want to stop trying to find you inside that mystery. That's how you become the man she doesn't just want, but the one she can't get out of her system.